Okay, item 17, consider Scott Frost annexation petition.
We received an annexation proposal from Scott Frost, and we started processing it. We talked a little bit obviously about that earlier, and sounds like we may have made a oversight and mistake in one step of that. But needless to say, we have a property owner who would like to be annexed into the city of Monticello. And after I've been to a few trainings, and hopefully we'll get all over to some, but anytime we have a citizen wanting to annex into the city, we should take that and run with it every single time that we can. So,
Is there any reason, because I haven't been around all that long, is there any reason why we would not want a property to be annexed into the city?
well,
I'm not saying in this specific
Yeah.
case, but what would be a reason we would not want that?
We have to add a lot of infrastructure.
Yeah.
If you had to add infrastructure?
If you were required to, I mean, you can annex properties in and not, the property owner. But that's usually the reason the property owner, generally, that's one of the reasons the property owner will annex in is for the services.
And there's some legal reasons you should.
Yeah. I mean, it depends, you know, if somebody had a, I don't know,
Pig farm.
a pig farm or something, yeah, I mean, I don't know, I mean, there might be something that each council, depending on the council, would wanna know and look at and say, well, you know, maybe we do or don't wanna do this, but.
That's probably no different than when the college came to us and they wanted to annex because they wanted, had these big plans, and so we annexed them so we could get them services eventually. And then they came back, whatever it was, want out of it, wanted out, because then they didn't want the requirements. So and again, we did it mostly because we felt that it worked best for them.
Yeah, and generally speaking, our requirements are definitely stricter than the county, you know, building restrictions, setbacks, animals, I mean, certain things, there's certain requirements that are, and so for somebody to want to be into the city, you know, they have to know all that and they have to be accepting of that.
Do we have a map, I mean, you've got this, but do we have a map showing the boundaries of where we're at currently?
That won't show it, well, no. You're talking about the city as a whole?
Yep.
Can you look at the zoning map?
So, because I'm wondering if there's properties around it, how it fits in relationship to other
This one-
properties.
This one, basically, you've got that industrial park that comes straight down. It's right at the end of the industrial park,
Is the industrial park currently in the city? So basically, we're just talking about,
adding on to the industrial.
so we're not talking about a standalone property out there.
We
It's
can't
already,
do that legally.
it's already butting up against city property. It's just a matter of saying, we want to make,
Yeah.
annex in this extra acre or
And
whatever.
it's within, it's
Got
15
Cheryl
acres.
Hollingsworth property that's in the city.
It's right north of it.
Right.
Kind of a hodgepodge down there.
Yeah, it's kind of in and out. So Cheryl Hollingsworth, across the street is, the industrial park is, which is, comes south and butts right up against yours, right?
Yeah. And we'll, you know, with that Rocky Mountain Power annexation, which unfortunately that map, we'll get some updated ones, but it's, we annexed in this one and this one already, so technically we're here. The piece we're talking about is right here, basically right on the end of that. And the state's encouraged us, and with state law, we're working towards eventually closing, you know, we need to close those off, but since they already exist, it's fine. But that's where, I don't know if that's what you're looking for, Scott.
So see what's what zone will likely
The
be
property owner is requesting ag.
agriculture. You're on this one, right?
Yeah, so it's right. Yeah, right there.
That answers my question, though. I want to know how you decide what zone it was.
They request it, and then it's up to
Request.
this, to
It's gotta
decide
be
whether.
so
it's-
acre before you can do.
Yeah.
And
And it, and where this property would border is already ag zoned.
yeah, so that makes
Makes
sense.
it a little easier.
The top's industrial, the bottom's
Be hard to make
ag,
it
or the sides ag.
Down here. If they
Hollingsworth.
were in the city, they would be.
The red,
yeah.
Scott, the red line is the expansion zone,
So
Industrial
it's within the
versus
expansion
industrial.
zone.
which we previously.
That's only above. So that makes sense.
So is this gonna, it would, annexing this section be an increased expenditure to the city?
It'd be considered new growth.
New
It would
growth.
add to the value. The assessed value currently is $98,000, so it would add $100,000 to the assessed value of the city of Monticello.
Which means
What?
what?
Which means whatever our tax rate is, I call it 00 whatever, times that by this $98,000, and that would be our increased property tax.
You guys plow the roads anyway because you gotta get to the sewer to do this.
Yeah, so I mean, they're, sorry,
Right?
we got
So do I,
more.
so I don't care.
We already have sewer and water, right?
Sharon likes it.
Yeah.
Your wife is
Doug,
still on
Mayor.
there.
That's correct.
Revenue wise though, Tim, because of these outside the city limits, the rates right now were double on all of it, so revenue wise it's not.
No, you're exactly right. If we had,
Any different.
yeah, somebody who pays for our water and sewer that's outside of the city, technically if they annex in, like we were looking at, Todd Randall has a piece of property and I gave him the numbers. He would actually save money by coming in because he'd pay less in water and sewer. His property, but it would still actually be less, so.
We won't get sewer from down there because we don't have sewer.
There's no sewer, there's no sewer.
No, but water.
Isn't that the same with the science center?
Yeah,
they're paying for it.
They have to pay for it.
Just put a hose over it.
Yeah, they do it.
I make a motion to approve Scott Frost annexation petition as presented.
Second. Okay, we have a motion by Tim Young to approve the Scott Frost annexation petition as presented and seconded by Craig Levitt. Any further discussion?
Question.
Yes.
I know part of the reason you moved that way, Scott, was for your daughter, and then have the animal to do. Currently, under the city code,
They
if it's
fit all of
annexed,
They fit all of
the kennel is,
It has to be an ag one zone and then he has to get a kennel license from us and meet the requirements for a kennel
Yes, we-
license.
I
We've
sat
already
down and
looked
went
at all
through
that.
item by item.
and
So
that's
him and
done.
his
So
daughter.
he's aware of all of those
Okay.
circumstances. Yeah, I knew that was an issue too, so we,
I went very quickly, item by item, and just said, these are the restrictions.
They know exactly what.
No shooting range.
I printed them off and handed them, so they have in their hands the code too, so.
Yeah, that question came up is, the people saw you, the other question they had is, reference to you on council, and now we're asking you to be annexed in the city. Are you admitting living outside the city for 6 months?
I admit that I own property outside of the city. I own property inside the city. The home that's on the property down there, I rent. What other questions you got? Yes, I've been staying there for the summer. Still not sure we're gonna stay in there for the winter. That's still up for debate.
I just know when you moved down there, we discussed with council.
And I don't change anything that I said back then, that I'm still following that same statement. We would decide at the end of December what we would do, and we're getting close to the end of December, we haven't decided yet. As cold as it's been, we might not stay there very long.
You still have a hearing though, right?
Yeah, this,
That you have to go through.
this starts a process,
Yeah.
a very strict process.
yeah, this by no means
Yeah, this is,
finishes it.
yeah, this is not an annexation.
This is the council approval to move forward.
Yeah, so the process out of that is what?
Over.
So, it's required by the state, so if, depending on this vote, the direction this goes, so there's a 30-day protest period for affected entities.
So for the county, the cemetery district.
Is that after you publish that?
Right, it needs to be published in a certain number of things, and in a certain number of ways, Cindy knows. If no protest is filed within 30 days, the certification by the legislative board. They can either deny or approve it from that point. If a protest is filed with the Boundary Commission, and if it's a valid protest is filed within 30 days of certification, the legislative body may respond to the Boundary Commission, deny.
Boundary Commission, Planning Commission?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And if they respond to a written decision sent to, and they'll send a written decision to the legislative body, and then there'll be a 20 days of appeal. Either way, the legislative body can holds a public hearing to approve or modify the petition and publish notice at least 7 days before hearing. The legislative body may deny the annexation or approve it. If they approve it, it goes back. The city has 30 days to file the article of incorporation, things like that. So essentially, it goes for a protest period. From there, yes or no, certain things.
So likely it'd be February.
Maybe even later.
Yeah.
And then when it's all done, you send everything into the lieutenant governor's office, and then they have to approve everything.
And it's all in the state code process for that.
I's dotted and T's crossed.
Yes.
Okay, any other?
That number 7, I think that kind of explains that survey on that annexation petition.
Okay, what?
Basically, he's saying that I need to pay for the survey, which I don't have a problem.
Any other discussion? Okay,
Can I ask a question?
sure.
So you just said to Brad that at the end of December, you're gonna make a choice. That if you're gonna stay living out there, or you're gonna move back into town. Is that a commitment that by the end of December, you will let the people of Monticello know if you're gonna live in the county and be a councilman, or live in the city and be a councilman?
I'm not even gonna go there.
That's what you just told him.
Okay,
Still not gonna go there.
Okay.
all right. Scott Frost,
I'm gonna refrain,
abstain.
or abstain, yeah, that works.
Start with him. Scott Shakespeare. Aye. Greg Levitt.
Aye.
Tim Young.
Aye.
Brad Randall.
Aye.
Okay, that motion passes with 4 ayes, with Councilman Scott Frost abstaining.